From a bullied boy in South Africa to a curious mind lost in books and imagination, Elon's early life was marked by loneliness, struggle, and an unshakable hunger for something more. But inside the silence, a fire was forming. Before he built rockets, before he defied the car industry, before he became the man the world now watches like a storm in the sky, he was just a boy. A small boy. Silent. Skinny. Awkward. He walked the halls of his South African school with his head down, books in hand, trying to disappear. But invisibility wasn't protection. The bullies found him anyway. He got beat up badly, his brother once said. Thrown downstairs. Punched in the face. Left bleeding and gasping. For years, it was like this. He had no army to defend him. No voice loud enough to stop it. But he had one thing, his mind. And that was his secret weapon. Elon Musk was born in 1971, in Pretoria, South Africa, a place full of division, dust, and silence. From the start, he didn't quite fit. He didn't care about the games the other boys played. He didn't speak much. In fact, his parents thought he might be deaf. But what no one saw was this: he was always thinking. As a child, he would sit for hours, motionless. His eyes open, but his mind somewhere else. Far away. In another world. In space. In machines. In distant futures that only he could see. While others threw punches, he turned pages. At age 9, he read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica. At 10, he taught himself how to code on a primitive computer. By 12, he'd created and sold his first video game. No one had to push him. His hunger came from within. But the outside world didn't care. He was lonely. Brutally so. His parents divorced when he was young. He chose to live with his father, a man who would later be called emotionally abusive. Elon barely speaks about it. When asked, he just says he was not a good human being. And so, trapped between a violent schoolyard and a cold home, Elon retreated further. Into fantasy novels. Into science fiction. Into his own inner universe. His English vocabulary grew like wildfire, not from teachers, but from Isaac Asimov, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Douglas Adams. These weren't just stories to him. They were blueprints. Clues to something bigger. The hero was never the strongest. He was always the one who thought differently. And Elon began to believe, maybe that was enough. But belief without escape is still a cage. He needed a way out of South Africa. A country he felt was collapsing in slow motion. He was a teenager when he made a decision that would change everything. He would go to America. The land of invention. The country where people like him, obsessed, relentless, visionary, could build the future. He used his Canadian-born mother's citizenship to secure a Canadian passport. With barely any money, no connections, and no promises, he boarded a plane at just 17. Alone. He had no apartment. No job. No guarantees. But he had two things: a dream. And English. The language he had absorbed from books and stories became his sword and shield. In Canada, he worked hard jobs, cleaning boilers, shoveling dirt, sleeping on floors. He talked to strangers, asked questions, made mistakes, learned fast. Every sentence sharpened his mind. Every accent trained his ears. Every conversation was a step toward survival. Because for Elon Musk, English wasn't just a language. It was a lifeline. A bridge to the future. He enrolled in Queen's University, then transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. Still unknown. Still broke. Still dreaming. He wrote essays that bent logic and possibility. He discussed philosophy and physics like they were tools, not theories. He talked about colonizing Mars, not as a fantasy, but as an eventuality. And still, most people didn't believe him. Many laughed. But Elon had stopped listening to the crowd long ago. Their doubt was just background noise. Because in his mind, something bigger was forming. Not just ideas. Companies. He saw the future not as something to wait for, but as something to build. This chapter of his life, quiet, painful, overlooked, is one many never hear about. But it's where the foundation was laid. Where he learned to endure. To stay silent under pressure. To think faster than pain. To build from nothing. And most importantly, to dream while bleeding. Because sometimes, the most powerful people in the world were once just the quietest kids in the room. The ones nobody saw coming. And Elon Musk was one of them. From his move to North America to the crashing failures of Zip2, PayPal, and early SpaceX, Elon faced heartbreak, betrayal, and bankruptcy. This chapter explores the darkest battles behind his boldest dreams. The world saw a man with ambition. But they didn't see the cost. By the time Elon Musk was in his late 20s, he had co-founded Zip2, a primitive software company meant to bring city directories and maps online, years before Google Maps would exist. He coded at night, slept in the office, and showered at the local YMCA. He lived like a ghost inside a dream. Investors came. But with them came control. He was eventually pushed out as CEO. His first taste of success was bitter. Still, when Zip2 sold for over $300 million, Elon walked away with $22 million. He was rich. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was to shape the future. So he bet his money, almost all of it, on the next idea, X.com. An online bank. One of the first of its kind. A revolutionary concept in a world still suspicious of the internet. He launched it fast. Too fast. And just like before, the board didn't trust him to lead. He was removed, again. But this time, the company merged and became something bigger. PayPal. Yes, that PayPal. And even though Elon Musk was no longer CEO, he was still a major shareholder. So when PayPal sold to eBay for $1.5 billion, he walked away with $180 million. Most people would retire. Buy a mansion. An island. Live like royalty. Elon Musk bought risk. He poured $100 million into a dream so big, people laughed in his face. SpaceX. A private company to build rockets. To go to space. To colonize Mars. Ridiculous. Impossible. Only governments can do that. He didn't care. Because Elon Musk wasn't trying to follow rules. He was trying to rewrite the story of the human race. He hired brilliant engineers. Built a team from scratch. Started testing. And failed. The first SpaceX rocket, Falcon 1, exploded. So did the second. Then the third. Each rocket cost millions. Each failure burned more than money. It scorched faith. NASA ignored him. The media mocked him. Friends told him to stop. He had one launch left. One rocket. One chance. And if it failed, SpaceX would die. At the same time, Tesla, his electric car company, was also drowning. The 2008 financial crisis had crushed markets. Investors vanished. Suppliers pulled out. He had to borrow money just to make payroll. At one point, he had $0 in his bank account. He had put everything, on the line. I was borrowing money from friends to pay rent, he later admitted. A billionaire, sleeping on couches. And as if that wasn't enough, his personal life shattered too. His marriage to Justine Wilson, his college sweetheart, began to collapse. They had already suffered a devastating loss. Their first child, Nevada, had died at just 10 weeks old. Now, years later, their relationship was broken. He was running out of money, running out of time, running out of people. For most, this would be the end. A spiral too deep to recover from. But for Elon Musk, it was the beginning. The fourth rocket, Falcon 1, launched from a remote island in the Pacific. The team watched in silence. Everything rode on this. If it failed, SpaceX would be finished. The engines roared. The rocket lifted. And for a few long, breathless minutes, it climbed. Higher. And higher. Until finally, it reached orbit. For the first time in history, a private company had successfully launched a rocket into space. The room exploded in cheers. Engineers cried. Musk stood quietly, trembling. He had done it. And just weeks later, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract. From bankruptcy to survival. At Tesla, things were just as brutal. The Model S, their first mass-market car, faced delays, criticism, and sabotage. But Elon pushed forward. He worked 100-hour weeks, slept on the factory floor, tested batteries himself. When he couldn't get parts, he flew across the world to negotiate in person. When assembly lines broke down, he learned how to fix them. He was everywhere, relentless, ruthless, obsessed. People called him crazy. But slowly, the impossible began to bend. Tesla delivered. The cars worked. The public began to believe. Investors came back. The company found breath. But only just. The scars remained. He was sued. Attacked. Mocked in headlines. He lost friendships. Damaged relationships. Collapsed under pressure. But what never broke was the vision. Elon wasn't driven by fame, or money, or revenge. He was driven by fear. Fear that humanity was running out of time. That if we didn't shift to sustainable energy, we'd drown. That if we didn't become a multi-planet species, we'd go extinct. And when your mission is survival, failure is never final. Behind every great success is 1,000 quiet breakdowns. Elon Musk bled for his dreams. He risked fortune, love, reputation, everything. And he kept going. Not because it was easy, but because he couldn't imagine living any other way. With the world watching, Elon rose from the ashes, Tesla, SpaceX, and a mission to save humanity. But behind the glory was a man still haunted by time, driven by vision, and carrying the lessons of 1,000 failures. The world changed. And suddenly, it was watching him. Once mocked as a lunatic with science fiction dreams, Elon Musk was now the face of innovation. SpaceX had made it to orbit. Tesla had begun to deliver cars. And yet, this was not the finish line. It was the starting gun. In 2012, the Dragon spacecraft docked with the International Space Station. It was the first private vehicle ever to do so. A moment once reserved for superpowers, achieved by a startup. The world blinked. Was this real? Could a man with no government backing, no military secrets, no political office, really outpace nations? He didn't slow down to answer. Because Elon Musk doesn't believe in slowing down. He believes in acceleration. He once said, "I'd like to die on Mars, just not on impact." The world laughed. But now, no one was laughing. Tesla rolled forward. Model S. Model X, Model 3. Each one sleeker, faster, smarter than before. Each one doubted before launch. Each one delayed, until it finally landed in the hands of believers. The oil industry hated him. Legacy automakers mocked him, then copied him. Investors called him reckless. He answered by building the world's most valuable car company. From nothing. But success doesn't soften Elon Musk. If anything, it sharpens him. He drove his team with the same intensity he used on himself. Employees collapsed. Executives quit. He was accused of pushing people too hard, asking the impossible, burning bridges with fire and silence. But the ones who stayed? They saw the vision. A world where fossil fuels didn't own the future. A world powered by sunlight, battery, and grit. And behind the chaos, results. Gigafactories rose. Superchargers spread. Tesla's battery technology improved so fast, it sent competitors scrambling. The mission wasn't just to make money. It was to make history. Then came the next leap. Reusable rockets. For decades, rockets were like fireworks. One launch. One burn. One crash. Billions lost to the ocean. Elon had a different plan: land them. Reuse them. Cut costs by 90. Again, he was mocked. A rocket, land vertically? Impossible. Suicidal. Dumb. Until it wasn't. In 2015, after many failures, SpaceX nailed it. A Falcon 9 returned to Earth and landed on a platform in the ocean, like something out of a movie. And suddenly, space got cheaper, faster, closer. Governments noticed. Competitors panicked. NASA, which once ignored Musk, now relied on him. In 2020, SpaceX made history again, launching astronauts to the International Space Station. From American soil. In an American rocket. For the first time in nearly a decade. Not by Boeing. Not by NASA. By a private company. By a kid once beaten in a South African schoolyard. By a man who had once borrowed rent money from friends. But all of this, the rockets, the cars, the billions, only scratch the surface. Because Elon Musk isn't building for today. He's building for tomorrow. In every project, every sleepless night, every impossible deadline is a singular mission to protect the future of humanity. Neuralink. A brain-computer interface meant to treat neurological disorders and eventually allow humans to merge with AI. The Boring Company. An attempt to solve urban traffic by creating underground transit tunnels. Starlink. A satellite network to provide internet access globally, even to the most remote, poorest parts of Earth. Mars. The ultimate dream. To terraform. To colonize. To create a second home for our species. Not to abandon Earth, but to ensure it. Because history teaches one truth: planets are fragile. But behind all the tech, the triumph, the thunder of rocket engines, is still a man. Flawed. Complex. Lonely. He's battled insomnia. Overwork. Divorce. Public meltdowns. Tweets that shook markets and scared shareholders. He's been called a genius. A tyrant. A prophet. A villain. But above all, he's been relentless. And through all of this, he never stopped learning. Not just engineering, physics, or finance, but language. Because words matter. English is his tool to communicate not only with engineers and investors, but with the world. He writes his own tweets, speaks on stage, stumbles at times, but pushes through. He never let the fear of imperfection silence him. And that's the lesson. You don't need perfect grammar to change the world. You don't need a flawless accent to build a dream. You don't need permission to begin. You need hunger, curiosity, and a refusal to stop, no matter how many times you're told no. Elon Musk was never the smartest in the room. He was never the strongest. He wasn't even the most charismatic. But he was obsessed with learning, with growing, with building the future. And that obsession is what made him unstoppable. So whatever you're struggling with, whether it's learning English, launching a dream, or surviving failure, remember this: the boy who barely spoke, who got beaten in hallways, who started with no money, no fame, no connections, now builds rockets that touch the stars. Not because he was lucky, but because he refused to quit. And if he can do that, what might you be capable of? The story is never over. It's only just begun.